Hello and welcome to another edition of the Liverpool Connection podcast. I'm Daz, Steers with me, and we're so happy to have this guest back on the show. He's an amazing author and journalist, Mr. Tony Evans.
Hey chaps, how are you tonight?
You still got that book, Steve? That's my book, by the way, Tony, that I lent him. That I haven't. You were on the show like probably about a year ago. I haven't seen that fucking book in a year. Yeah, I'm calling you out now, Steve. On video.
You know, funny story is this morning I went to look for the book and I was like, man, I can't, because I do have a lot of books that are autographed and this has your autograph, and I'm like, I don't remember getting one from Tony. And then when you said, hey, that's my book, I'm like, oh man. You might get it one day. I'm not sure. Well, welcome back, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Today, do you want to go start, Steve?
Yeah. Hey, let's since we're bringing you back on, and tell us what's been happening in your world in the last year. I know outside of just watching the matches, what have you been working on as part of your writing career?
It's been much of the same stuff, but one thing that's happened recently is I've got the green light on a novel that'll be published in November, which is set in Liverpool from the 60s through to almost the contemporary time, and it's gangsterism. There's some football in it. There's some football hooliganism. Plenty of left-wing politics. It's about two murders. It's about many themes in it, but about the change in British society that came about as a result of Thatcherism, and trying to illustrate that story of a Liverpool family trying to outrun their criminal heritage, and so that's quite exciting. That'll be coming out in November, called Good Guys Lost, and hopefully everyone will enjoy it. The main character is Nevertonian.
It sounds like you're trying to outrun your past, when you were kind of a hooligan back in the days.
I was never a hooligan. No, funnily enough, this has been said a few times, over the years, and I know it's only a joke here, but I think it's one of those things where the phenomena of football hooliganism, most people don't understand what it was all about, and they've bought into this mythology, this idea of the top boy and your calling cards and organised violence. I mean, for most of the time, what I saw was a bunch of working class young men put in confrontational situations with, sort of the catalyst of alcohol, and that, was the vast majority of what is now known as football hooliganism. And it was kind of organic, it wasn't organised. And later on, it became almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, with the ICF and the service crew and all that, and all this firms, but you know what? It wasn't really like that. Certainly not, in up till about 85, 86. And then, it began to take on this weird thing. And all these people who write hooligan books, I read them and I'm like, you know what? It's not at all what it was like, and I was there, so I know. So a lot of it's a load of black. I mean, I say with Far Foreign Land particularly, I tried to give a sense of what it was like. I did last week. I spoke to a Belgian TV crew who are doing a documentary about Heysel, and I did about 4 hours talking about it. But we were talking about the same sort of thing, and I think. I was saying to them that one of the era has become filled with mythology rather than reality. Mm-hmm. And so Far Foreign Lands was a chance to for me to give what was my reality. But I said to this Belgian film crew, they said to me outright, they said, how many times were you involved in football violence? Mm-hmm. I said, well, I probably punched 5 people. Mm-hmm. In the whole of the time I went the away games. So I started going on away games on my own with me mates rather than with me dad. in sort of 75. And the long run sort of ended with, sort of going less after Hillsborough because of that. And in all that time, 5 people are punched, and 2 of them were Liverpool fans who were playing up. I told them to behave themselves, and they didn't. So, I mean, it doesn't exactly, like, it's I certainly wouldn't pump myself up as a top boy, and that. So it's a very misunderstood era. And again, part of what this stuff I've been writing about that'll be coming out in November is about, the way society in Britain was back then and the way it's changed. And I mean, to be fair, it was a very, very much more violent society in the 80s than it is now, even though sometimes when you from the media, it doesn't seem like it was. It seems like we live in a very violent era. We don't, not compared to the 80s. And, so I think it's loads of things have changed for the better. And there's much less, there's much less naked aggression than there was, say, 30, 40 years ago. And I think that's a good thing. And particularly around football, because I mean, the thing is, to be fair, when there was fighting at football matches, you'd watch it and you kind of enjoy it. It was almost like half-time entertainment. It was better than having, a crap band playing before the Champions League final, against Tottenham. It was like, well, what's all that about? So you'd laugh at it and you'd enjoy it. But to be honest, it got in the way of the fun. No one wants people punching them. No one wants to be running around the streets and, and all that sort of stuff. Well, a lot of people did, but I think it said in Far Foreign Lands, it was like, most of it was street ballet. There'd be like thousands of people surging and counter-surging. There'd be hundreds of police chasing them everywhere. And there'd be a handful of punches thrown. And, and then, you get back to the Yankee that night and everyone would be going, yeah, there was murder, there was anarchy, it was like, and this big mock heroic sense of like, they've been involved in something. One lads we knew, we were at Leeds, and the Leeds fans come into the station, and one of them threw one of the trolleys, the luggage trolleys, down the stairs, and it went bouncing down the stairs. And, and it looked impressive, it looked very violent, nowhere near any of us. But one of these lads we knew goes, one day we'll tell our grandchildren about this. And you're like, well, you what? No, we won't, Well, he probably might. He probably is at the moment.
It's funny to me that, being across the pond here and a lot of people's first recollection of hooliganism is obviously from England and, means Green Street, whatever. What was that movie called?
Green Street.
Yeah. And you kind of forget that it's prevalent in other places besides England, right? I mean, we just had a situation in Mexico about a month ago, right? That was pretty horrendous as a football experience, but and it's Eastern Europe and South America. So I mean, for England fans to to get the crux of all the blame, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those things. Whenever you get large groups of people together, and especially when you get people from the, let's say, lower ends of the social scale, there's that sort of the possibility. That stuff that happens in Mexico was unbelievable. Those pictures, honestly, it knocked me sick. And the film, some of them kicking people in the head or not, and I mean, I thought there was bound to be, a significant number of deaths there, but the authorities either give us false numbers or people are remarkably resilient and sort of, but it went on everywhere. I mean, one of the things, again, going back to Far Foreign Lands, is the way we were treated in Rome. The level of violence directed at us we hadn't seen anything like that abroad. It was like, it was unbelievable. And it's something that always happens everywhere to a greater or lesser degree. I think the fact that, a lot of the, certainly England supporters going away in the late 70s and early 80s were particularly jingoistic and particularly provocative. So it it made it, sort of it amplified the incidents much bigger than than everyone else's, and some of the English clubs going abroad. But I mean, for us, we had very little trouble when we went abroad until Heysel, until Rome, and then obviously Heysel after that. And going abroad for us was, was fun. It was almost a break. You thought, there wasn't a gang of loons running around trying to kill you. It was like, and we had a great time. And anyway, being frankly, brutally honest about it, our boys were more interested in robbing than they were, fighting. I mean, that doesn't mean that, we couldn't be as bad as everyone else, because, some of them were hard lads, a lot of them were hard lads. But generally, the attitude of our lot was, we don't want it, right? But if you want it, you'll get it, and it's like, leave us alone, because we don't want it. But if you want it, you'll get it. So they tended to react to it rather than being, than kicking us off themselves. But even that, I mean, as I say, our lot tended to be split into three sections: the drinkers, the fighters, and the robbers. And the fighters were a very, very small proportion. Thankfully, I was in the drinking crew.
I think I'm in part of that crew as well, the drinking crew. I'm the president of that club as well. So, as we come closer to the anniversary of Hillsborough, previous guest of ours, Ian Byrne, the MP there, has been really involved in making some legislative changes there in Liverpool with the Hillsborough Law, and then the Real Truth Legacy Project. Can you share your thoughts, and if you're have any, you're cooperating in helping those two endeavors go?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to him in very early on, on his plans about to get a Hillsborough Day in the schools where the people had learned about it. And obviously he's starting on Merseyside, and and the information sort of packets that they've got for the teachers and schools, brilliant. And Ian's done some magnificent work, and continues to do it. Again, people think because the criminal trials are all over, and that basically, there's nothing to do. Basically put a fork in it, it's done. But like, it isn't. It isn't. The fight will go on for a long time, because increasingly there is been Hillsborough denial grown, and we need to counter that wherever we can. And you saw like Man City fans doing Hillsborough gestures at the Etihad at the weekends. These are people who weren't even born when it happened. Right. And you know what? We've got to stop the banterification of Hillsborough. It's outrageous. And I mean, we're not just taking this education thing to the to the schools. I mean, initially it's starting on Merseyside, but we want to make it much, much wider. The plan is eventually to get it on the curriculum in all the schools in England. And and people like myself and Richie Greaves, who's a survivor, who's in the pens. We're going to Utrecht University to talk to the students about it next month. And I, for the last 2 or 3 years, I've spoken to on the London campus of Syracuse University to American students to talk about what happens and the impact of it. What we want is to make sure it's not forgotten, and to make sure that the guilty parties who were not prosecuted, who were allowed to get off it by the courts and the legal system, to make sure that their reputation will forever be tarnished. You know what? So whenever the likes of Duchamfield or Betterton, when their name comes up in conversation, people will say, oh yeah, they were the bad coppers. They were the ones who screwed up the jobs and cost people lives. So you know what? We can't put them in jail. And we probably most of us probably didn't even want to put them in jail, but we wanted to see them take responsibility because they were happy to take the honours, the pay rises, the big jobs. They were happy to take all the kudos that come with their positions, but not the responsibility. Well, what we'd like to do is continue to hold them responsible so that everyone knows. And, and all right, it mightn't be a great deal, but, but make sure that they will be remembered, and they'll be remembered as wrong-uns forever. And that, that is something that will be an ongoing process. And I suppose even more importantly, and the most important thing, is to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Because, what was really distressing for me was to see, 5 years ago at the Manchester bombing, 2 of the victims died in similar circumstances to the Hillsborough victims because the ambulances didn't get to the Manchester arena, the MEN arena. They were stuck there. There was a lack of communication and coordination. People were carried out, like Hillsborough, on advertising hoardings instead of stretchers. And 2 of the people who died there, one a young girl and one a lad in his 20s, they died simply because they didn't receive medical attention soon enough. And there you have it. In 2017, we had the echoes of Hillsborough, and we can't allow these things to happen again. Anytime you or a member of your family go out to a public event, or your friends, any of your loved ones, they must be sure that the authorities will do the best to protect them in the case of the worst thing happening. And if something dreadful does happen, then they will take responsibility, and the authorities will look at it forensically and see what went wrong and make sure it happens again. And that has never been done with Hillsborough. Hillsborough is not a Liverpool problem. Hillsborough is not a football problem. Hillsborough is a problem for every person in the United Kingdom. And it's about protecting every one of them, even the idiots who make Hillsborough gestures and sing Hillsborough songs, them and their families.
Daz and I, we make sure that we're always trying to keep that subject in the forefront, because it is important, right? To, like you said, not just to Liverpool, but to the society as in general, because a lot of that really is boiled down to systematic problems and issues that need to be rectified, whether it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, so that those same things don't happen again. And, so yeah, when we kind of had I feel like the same responsibility as part of the supporters club too, to make sure that when new fans come, every game at the pub, there's 20, 30 new people. And so we want to make sure that history stays alive, and that it really encompasses what, the club is all about. So we really appreciate your efforts. And obviously, when next time you speak to Ian, let him know that, we're watching what he's doing from across the pond, and we really appreciate what he's doing.
Yeah, I'll tell him. He actually he lives in the next block to me when he's down in the Parliament, so he's only round the corner, So it's easy for us to go and have a pint and to talk about this stuff. So he's for obvious reasons, people don't have a great deal of trust in politicians, and they tend to tar all politicians with the same brush. But you know what? There's people like Ian, and most of the politicians who are most trustworthy and should have the country in their hands, barely known. People like Ian, and there's lots of politicians who are really who are brilliant at what they do, who fight hard for everyone in the country, and who really are admirable people and should be looked up to. And he's a great example of it. So I think every time we tend to go, never trust a politician. So it's a bit like never trust a journalist. Don't trust the venal ones, but there are plenty who are trustworthy. And Ian is a great example of it.
Yeah, I had a similar conversation last week at a little gathering, and I had to step away before it got out of hand. But transition to football, recently we Liverpool won the Carabao Cup. So share us your experiences that day, because, for a lot of people, Mickey Mouse Cup, it doesn't matter. But I tell you what, it mattered when we were at the pub. It mattered to everybody. So,
you know what? And here's the truth of it. It was only the Mickey Mouse Cup when Everton got into it, you know,
Okay.
in the 70s. When you're in the final, it's never the Mickey Mouse Cup. You know, you should want to win every competition you enter. And I know that you've got to prioritize them at times. But to me, one of the great things in life is a day out at Wembley for a big game. And that was a hell of a game, you know, against Chelsea. And I think they were very, very unfortunate to have the goals disallowed, you know. But you know, it was a tremendous game, and the drama of the penalty shootout. You know, it's like it was just fantastic, and you know, and to see, you know, to go through the whole team, and then you know, sort of with all the shenanigans about the keepers, and he missed it. It was just a brilliant occasion, and I you know, I understand that you need to finish in the top 4 and all that. But you know what? In years to come, you know, kids who went to that game, kids who sort of other years had seen us finish in the top 4, and you know, like last year, you know, sort of the COVID year, you know, we magnificent run in the end to get after looking out of it. But you know, in years to come, they're not going to go, oh yeah, remember that year we just got into the last 4 at the end. They're going to remember that Wembley, you remember the big day out, and to me that's the essence of football. Going to match with your mates and seeing a huge event like that, you know, that imprints itself on your memory. That doesn't matter where you are, you know. So you'll always remember being in the pub, you know, and I can imagine the celebrations when the penalty missed, you know. I can imagine the chaos and all that, and you know, and then afterwards the fun you had, and you know, it's like I mean, it's just that's what football is about. It's about memorable moments, and I loved it. And you know, again, we've got a semi-final at Wembley. I hate Wembley semi-finals, but you know, it could be worse. And I think that's going to be a fantastic day. You know, the days that make supporting football clubs worthwhile, and we're lucky we get a load of them.
Yeah, we are lucky. And you know, Daz at the very beginning of the season said that we just want to win a cup at Wembley. You know, to just remind him of his you know, being back home and those days being events, you know, for him and his mates. So yeah, well, let's hope for another trophy at Wembley.
That's the whole thing. It's the traveling, isn't it, Tony? Like that's part and parcel of it, and that's what you loved, like going up to Wembley or going down to Wembley. Yeah, I miss those days. It's just at the start of the season, you know, you're looking at this Liverpool team and what they've done in the last, you know, 4 or 5 seasons, and you're like, we're going to win at least a trophy. I mean, I don't believe anybody that would say we're going to be in a FA Cup semi-final, you know, hopefully a semi-final of the Champions League, but only a point behind City, and we've won a trophy. I mean, it's what dreams are made of.
It's absolutely remarkable, and the standards they've set over the past 3-4 years are absolutely amazing. And when you think it's against Man City, who are the best resource team ever, you know, who essentially are the sport arm of an emirate, you know, it's and they've got the finances to blow everyone else out of the water, and you know, Klopp, and I credit Klopp for this most of all, because although Fenway deserve a lot of credit, and you know, and I've praised Fenway plenty over the years, also criticised them, but like until Klopp arrived, they kind of didn't, you know, they never got it quite right. You know, the recruitment wasn't quite right. You know, you've got, you know, it's like Markovic and Emre Can, people were briefing, they were going to change, you know, change the nature of the Premier League, and you know, actually they didn't, you know, and you had that sort of thing. Klopp come in, everything got refined, everything got better, and you know, and he's done this, and you look at them, and I look at that performance against City at the Etihad. City were better, but Liverpool hung in, like, you know, that sort of street fight net. You know, they were gonna, they weren't letting this one get away from them. You know, they were gonna fight tooth and nail. And it's brilliant, and yet you like the game finishes, and it was a great game. City were very, very good. Liverpool were just very good. You know, it's one of them. And you look at like on social media, and everyone's piling in onto the players. And you're thinking, you know what? If you're slaughtering your players after this, God help you if you're an Evertonian. You know, it's like, get a grip, get a grip. Fabinho, he had a stinker, you know, and his standards have been so high over the past few years that, it's a surprise when he plays as badly as that. And, but, you know, when you've done so well, you've achieved so much, you should have a pass to have an occasional bad game. You know, it's like, you know, and City did really well. I thought Guardiola outthought Klopp and found a way of basically showing up a lack of mobility in midfield. And that's something that will have to be addressed by, by the semi-final, by Saturday. But, like, you know what? You're getting exposed by arguably the best football team in the world at the moment. And the margins are so thin. You're like playing nip and tuck with them. And, you know, on more than one occasion recently, you've got your nose in front. And people are complaining. What the hell did he want? What the hell are they watching? And you know what? They should go and take up another sport. Because if you're churlish about Liverpool when it's like this, then you're a complete not a twat.
You know, it's fascinating you said about the being out coach, because Man City doesn't normally play like that. They don't usually play over the top, you know, and stretching the field. They're usually run through their midfield and everybody's coming up and isolating defenders. But so it was fascinating approach, and you know, our high line has been so successful all year. But you know, at the end of the day, it was a deflected goal. It was a goal on a set piece that, you know, some people would, in the past, that would have been offsides, right? Those guys that are standing in front of the goal or the keeper. And so fine margins, but yeah, I mean, if you're going to complain about that, that's the best team has to, you know, we drew with the best team on their form and we still have levels to go. So I was really positive about the draw, because I mean, your expectations can't be to go in there and hammer them at home, you know, on a day like that anyway.
And you know, and there was some disappointment that they couldn't eke out a victory, because, you know, it's you look at it and it could well be that both teams win out from here on in. You know, there's they're both good enough. But, you know, if you finish second to Manchester City on 94 points and they get 95, and, you know, it's like there isn't much to be disappointed about there, because, you know, as I say, they're arguably the best team in the world. So are Liverpool, arguably the best team in the world when they're on form. And, you know, if City get themselves a prolific striker next year, then we will all worry. You know, it'll be. I think that will give them a you know, sort of an extra edge. But it's so close. You know, it's almost not quite a toss of a coin, but between the two best club teams in the world. And if you come on, you know, on the down ends of it, it's like, I don't know, it's like, you know, it's Ali Frazier, you know, this is monumental. This is something that people will talk about for years and years and years. And we were all lucky to see it. And if you come second in these circumstances, I don't think you want to be turning on players or managers or the owners. I think you've got to recognise that sometimes, you know, the opposition is just so good that coming close to matching them is an achievement in itself. And not only that, as I say, we've more than matched them. We've beaten them. We've got ahead of them over the last few years. And so, I you know, as I say, I just don't know what people want from football sometimes.
And it doesn't make sense. We potentially could play them 3 more times, right? So why slate their players after this?
Yeah, and like, and I think it'll be very different on Saturday. I think we saw a sign of how things will go with the way they got physical with De Bruyne in the second half. You know, and they kicked him up in the air. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets that treatment again on, you know, because the City players like to run with the ball, and I expect them to be trying to discourage that running as much as they can. And of course, they'll have had a difficult game against Atletico, who will undoubtedly get very physical with them. So it's going to be fascinating to see how Klopp adjusts his tactics and what he does to, because certainly they won't allow City to do the same thing they did to them, at the Etihad, again at Wembley.
Well, and we have, 35,000 Liverpool fans as well, which makes a huge difference.
Well, yeah, to be honest, though, 3,000 of our lot making a lot of noise in the Etihad.
That's true.
Hey, Tony, you mentioned in the Champions League, what are your thoughts on, doing away with the away goals rule and just the proposed expansion of the tournament for, in the coming years?
I just think it's all crap. The away goal team, the away goals rule worked quite well. I thought it was, it encouraged you to get something because, before that was introduced, teams would just go away and just try and kill the game dead. Come away with a draw, take them home and score. And with the away goals rule, particularly in the last 10 years, the attitude was, let's go to their place and score, kill the game there. And it made it much more exciting, much more open. And, I think ultimately it worked really well. As for the expansion, it's the last thing it needs. And as for the historical coefficients, it just, all it is, we're heading towards the Super League under a different name.
Right.
It's like all the outrage, last year when the Super League proposal come, and yet really UEFA want to do the same thing and get the small cabal of clubs in playing each other all the time. So it gets vast television audiences in the Far East, particularly and across the world, and then in North America. And that's all they're thinking about. They're thinking about money. They're not thinking about competition, and they're not thinking about how brilliant it is when a club comes from nowhere and makes a big impression. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I mean, now at this stage of the Champions League, it's great, and all that. But the times you think to yourself, what? I don't want to go to Madrid again. I've been there. We've played Real Madrid too often. We've played Atletico too often. Boring. It's like I don't want to go to Barcelona. All the, in the old days, it used to be really exotic, and you'd be desperately hoping you got teams, and now it's a bit like that. You see the same faces every couple of years, and it's and it's like it gets a bit tired, and it loses sparkle a little bit. It was certainly and this stupid, the Swiss league thing, where you're in a, sort of a 20-team league, and but you only play, half of them. It just, to me, it doesn't make sense. It goes against it when it's like anything. When you have to explain how a league works to the punters, then you've got it wrong.
Yeah.
You should be able to look at it and see clearly how it works, what you need to do. You're going to play 3 teams twice, home and away, and you need to get more points than the rest of them.
Yeah.
Now, and that's, when you start talking about qualifying, you bring in coefficients into it. So you don't know who's going to qualify. It should be simple. You look at the table. Oh, those 4 are in.
Yeah.
Someone's historical coefficients. That's all bollocks, and it's all about money. And and it just, I am left dismayed by the changes.
It's so disappointing when you look at like Ajax, a storied program, right? And then we're so happy that they make these knockout stages because it's a new team is making the final 8 or final 16. It's just like, it's Ajax, but I understand what you're saying. It's the same teams over and over. That's why last year when Atalanta was got through to the next group stages and everybody kind of went we're looking at that club is because you do want to see different teams make it if you can, right?
Yeah, definitely. And and one of the great things about going away to Europe is go if you get the chance to go to places you've never been before.
Right.
That's it's like when you seem to almost have a season ticket to Madrid, it's like it's you want to go to exotic places and see teams and I realize with the money getting ever more distilled to a small cabal of clubs and all the talent being increasingly in a smaller pool of teams and that's the future. But I mean it was so much better when, well, certainly for me it was so much more fun when you had people coming from nowhere who'd win it, and it's you think to yourself, especially in the early 80s when we played and got knocked out quite a lot by Eastern European teams. And obviously I realised Iron Curtain was there, but with the wall-to-wall television coverage, you'd never seen these people. You didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know what style of football they were, and often it was, it was, they were brilliant. You're like, whoa, and it comes as a surprise to you. I suppose that's the thing that comes down to it in the end. There's nothing surprising anymore because we see everyone on television. We watch we know everything. We've grown up in an era where, and it's good. I'm not saying it's not. Like you can see almost every game Lionel Messi played in the last 10 years. One of them. See it almost every goal. But it does take away some of the magic, some of the anticipation where you've only heard about players, you've read about them, and you're like, oh, really excited. I remember Barcelona in '76, when Cruyff coming to Anfield. I was excited for about a week and a half to finally see him in the flesh. It was terrible. They clamped down on him, didn't give him much to do. It was just like, it was wonderful to see it. And now it's a bit like, there's no mystery. And I say there's pros and cons in that. I'm an old man shouting at the clouds.
Sorry. Obviously a lot of the talk is about money in the game, right? And now I wanted to just ask you on a personal level, when you're in your journalistic hat on and you see the Saudi Arabia consortium taking over Newcastle, what are your do you think that 2 or 3 years are going to be the new city? I mean, I want to say deep down that it's not that easy to do that, but maybe it is. What are your thoughts there?
I think that's their intention.
Right.
I'm not sure that they'll spend as much as City in the sense that PIF, the Public Investment Funds of Saudi Arabia, a business that's in it to make money. It's about diversification from the oil and gas in Saudi Arabia. And the second thing is, it took City a little while to do it, but what you need to do is get a really good executive sort of group together to run the club. And what I think, they haven't appointed the chief executive yet at Newcastle, St James's Park. And I'm like, And some of the people who are involved in the takeover business, Amanda Staveley and her husband, and I've gone absolutely blank on the Jamie, what's his name?
Yeah, I can't help you on that. Sorry.
From the family. Anyway, you can probably cut that out. But they've been a little bit too excited to get involved in football and get involved in the, some of the business of football. And what you need is real top class professionals in there. Otherwise, you'll find that you do stupid things. For example, you look at Everton, who've spent more than £500 million on, in the last 5 years, and you've got like the owner. We've got the owner's. How should we put it? How do we put it delicately? the owner's mentor
Mhm.
and backer in Usmanov, so, and obviously there were sanctions against him now, oligarch,
Mhm.
and you've got Bill Kenwright, and they're all like dipping tipping their fingers into what the director of football should be doing. So there's no real strategy. Each has got the favourite agents, and so suddenly they're spending money. They spent over 500 million, and they've got themselves a squad that looks if it's worth 500 quid. Sunday league squad, some of them, and so unless they get that right at Newcastle, it will take a long time for them to do it. But they are certainly going to be as wealthy as one of the wealthier clubs, and if they do put the right people in the right positions, then they will improve, and they'll probably, I think, over a 7 or 8 year period, eventually come to supersede Chelsea, in the position they are. I know the people involved at Newcastle quite well, because they tried. Amanda Staveley twice tried to buy Liverpool, three times tried to buy Liverpool, and so I had quite a lot of dealings with it over that period, and I think that they're still a little bit overexcited about actually being able to buy a club and being there and being the centre of attention. And what you want to do is, if you're an owner, you want to be, well, I don't even know whether you want to be seen but not heard. You don't want to be seen or heard. You want to be in the background, and you want to let the football people make football decisions. And that's what they haven't done yet. And if I would have been them, they actually had a plan, a strategy ready for the takeover. When the takeover happened, it went out the window in the chaos of the moment. And the people that they had engaged to oversee the staff at Newcastle and decide, who was good and who wasn't, and to deal with any agents who, because obviously in a big takeover, agents come like wasps, around syrup, So, but neither of them were actually engaged to do what they were supposed to do, and a sort of madness took over. And of course, they're going to have to overpay to get people to move to the northeast. Newcastle's a lovely city.
Yeah.
And it's got absolutely brilliant beaches all around it. Like Liverpool, no one ever thinks of them as like beach cities, but they are, But mind you, the weather means but it's still difficult to get high-profile players to places like that without a record of success. Sure. So they're going to have to overpay, but I think eventually they will get. They do have the backing of the state, and if the decision is made in Riyadh that they're going to be an arm of state policy in the way City for Abu Dhabi, then they'll be another contender that are going to have to be dealt with, and they'll have spending power far in excess of what the likes of Liverpool and certainly Chelsea are going to have, and Tottenham. Manchester United are probably the only ones who can compete with them. But again, there's another perfect example of bad executives. What happens in the boardroom? People always want to blame the players and the managers, but invariably, what goes on the pitch is a symptom of what's going on in the boardroom. And the real illness that needs curing is in the boardroom. And once that's cured, the pitch will sort itself out, especially if you got a lot of money.
You mentioned obviously Manchester United and Everton, and all banter aside, Liverpool fans, are laughing at the results that they're having and just their situation on the field. We wouldn't cry if Manchester United got relegated, but there'd be a lot of tears if Everton gets relegated in there. So can you kind of talk us to your perspective on the ground there, and just what the tenor of the situation is in Liverpool?
Well, I come from a generation where sort of we didn't ace each other. I went to a lot of Everton away games with my mates. I've probably been to Old Trafford more times with Everton than most Evertonians. So it's and they come with us. And so there's that sort of relationship. And I never wanted them to win. Before I started going to Liverpool away games, I'd go to Goodison. When I was young, I never wanted them to win. But had a good laugh when they got beat. But it's they were your mates. They were the people you family members. God help me, not my family, but it's family members, the people you saw every day in Evertonians. So it kind of there was a togetherness there. I think that's largely faded, and the levels of bitterness are absolutely awful. I think the vast majority of Liverpool fans in the city would laugh like drains if Everton got sucked down the drain into the Championship. I personally wouldn't. I think the city needs two Premier League clubs. I think it's important to the city. I think it'll be good if that stadium gets built. I think it will be good if the infrastructure around the area, which is sort of very close to where I come from and where my mother was living until very, very recently. So I think it'll be great for there, and obviously it'll be more of a struggle if they go down, and I don't think that'll be less people come to the games. Right. So I don't think it's good for the city. Having said that, my initial reaction would be to guffaw like a loony at the thought of them going down. So I'd have mixed feelings. So if I was going to cry tears, I think 60% of them would be salty sorrow, 40% of them would be amused.
Being a fan from across the pond here and not having lived in Liverpool, being part of a supporter of the Liverpool Football Club, you support the city as well. And bottom line, if Everton gets relegated, that's not in the best interest of the city of Liverpool not to have both teams there. On the other hand, like you said, I would laugh because it just shows you that money, just having tons of money doesn't do it. It shows you what having a good executive board, like you had mentioned before, actually a plan in place, a good scouting department, an academy that works, all that stuff put together. That's where I'd find the humor, because especially for all the FSG out people. But other than that, I wouldn't want to see them go down just because for the economic standpoint of the city of Liverpool. So,
and the other thing is Rafa. They'll all blame Rafa, and you know what? What does he spend? What, 2 million of this? 500 plus. One of them. And the damage was all done before he got there.
Yep.
Yes, it was a bad appointment because the hostility from the stands, also inside Goodison, and it was pushed by Usmanov, who who really was in this circumstance overrode machinery. So it's like who's and you can't really be doing that. So that, but the way they treated him and the way they'll blame. I mean that's where most of my pleasure would come from. After watching Burnley on Sunday, though, they were so poor, so meek against Norwich, that I think Sam Dyche's shtick has run out of steam at Turf Moor, and I suspect Burnley will be too poor to even put pressure on Everton, and so I think we either resign ourselves to or / celebrate them staying up.
Yeah, it's just great watching them like squeaky bum time, like they are the shit in it, and I love it. I don't want them to go down either, but I've got some in my family that are Blues, and I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm like, even the Man United, when I'm like, it's shit. You played United, who was shit. Have you looked at your other fixtures as well? I mean, Burnley are going down. They are. It's Watford, Burnley, and Norwich. They are. It's just so great. Like, we could win the league, and they could possibly get relegated. I mean, that's Christmas in May.
Well, it would be hysterical in many ways, but I think it's for the better. And also, can you imagine Town every Saturday night? After Liverpool come back from an away game, they've played at home or in the Championship, It would be most unpleasant. I think there'd be a lot of harsh words spoken, and the Merseyside constabulary would, sort of would have to work it out.
Yeah, it's bad enough down in the middle of the town anyway, you know. But Tony, as we wind down, I know me and Steve, it's always a pleasure having you on, because it's always a great conversation with you. You know, it's as real as anything, and we love that.
No, it's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, we look forward to your book coming out in the fall, so we'll make sure everybody knows about it, and we'll put it on our social media. So
yeah, we'll have you back on once it's out.
Yeah, because like the main character might be an Evertonian, but the narrators are red. So strongest voice in the book's red.
Good.
That's great.
All right, Tony. Cheers, mate.
Pleasure.
Cheers, Tony.